Non-binary elephant
podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Non-Binary Elephant podcast. We're back. It's been a while. Jay, hello Jay, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Jay's been travelling all over the country and all over the world doing his thing. I've been wiping arses at home. Babies' arses, yeah, not just any old general random arse. We've got a sponsor as well, which is crazy. We are sponsored now by Miles Franklin, protecting your family's financial future from corporate greed and government corruption. How did I do? Is that all right, Jay?
Yeah.
I'm not very good at the corporate stuff normally. The web address, anyway, is in the description below. This week, we're joined again. It's been a while now. I'm trying to think how long it's been, actually, since we were joined by Krasi and we were talking about ancient astrology. The video got loads and loads and loads and loads of traction. Lots of people really interested in what you were saying. You got in touch with us this time because you wanted to talk about astrology and how it is interacting with what's going on now in terms of modern events. Would you like to expand on that?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, we live in very interesting times, unfortunately, because it's not so really nice to live in such interesting times. I thought that what is happening on the sky is very interesting and is always resulting in interesting events here on Earth. And there are ominous events which happened. For example, in France, we had the cathedral. Notre Dame, which you all remember the fire in the cathedral.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, and this is not just something that happened by accident. This is a very, very important event which happened while Jupiter was just entering his stationary phase. And I see this event as something very good and related to people's awakening spirituality, because Jupiter is the one who brings justice. Jupiter is the one who is related to people's philosophy, belief systems, religion, so much. And Jupiter is good, benefic planet. So we have, of course, many configurations of planets right now, but Jupiter definitely is the one who stayed behind this for good. So fire in any ancient mythology, culture is associated with purification, with awakening, with something like portal opening. So we had this happening in France, and this is something that is very, very ominous for good. But also, of course, we see that nothing is easy right now. And what is happening also is that we are having some sky celestial configurations which are not so typical. These are things that we don't see just every day. We see 2-3 times or more per year eclipses, and it's so very normal. But there are some specific events, configurations which we do not see every day. And this is, for example, all these retrograde planets right now, like Saturn, Pluto, Ketu, always retrograde, Jupiter, and they all work, of course, on mundane level. We all see how they influence our routine, everyday life, on every corner of the globe. And you can see how the economy slowed down. You can see that the climate is absolutely not typical. You see that this is resulting always in some sorts of events. Now, just a very small disclaimer before I tell you 2-3 words how I see this and how I see the upcoming. How I see the upcoming eclipses influencing us, just to say that when the universe, the nature, is giving some events which are complex, the solution is always there. So nothing is like without solution, nothing is just given as a pure difficulty. It is given to so that we solve it, so that we uplift our level of consciousness, for example. So what is happening is that this particular interesting position, which is happening right now in Sagittarius and in Scorpio, all these retrograde planets are influencing very much the economy, and we see this. But on the 2nd of July, we will have an eclipse which will activate, will activate these particular aspects. And very interestingly, this eclipse is happening, this eclipse is a little bit mimicking, the chart of America, for example. It is happening with the same ascendant. The eclipse is happening on the Sun, on the Jupiter, on Venus of the chart of America. And this is very interesting because this, by all means, will create some some interesting will result for sure in events. And these events, because the eclipses are, since ancient times, are not considered to be very beneficial. They are opening portals for energies to come and teach us something. So the eclipse is happening on like mimicking the chart of America, and it will certainly influence like the rulership, the king will create problems, will slow down a little bit the economy. And this is not just to saying this is not just to create fears. It is just that there is, of course, certainly solution to every challenge that's coming into our lives. But very interestingly also is that this particular eclipse is powerfully influencing UK because it is happening on the moon of the chart, which you have 7th of December 1922, the birth chart of the UK. And this is also influencing all these retrograde planets, and is creating certainly slow down of every activity. It's like what you have now with Brexit will stay unsolved for quite some time, will stay hanging, and like Britain will be in the middle of unsolved situation for quite some time because of the eclipse. Also, when I follow a bit the politics, I was interested to see the chart of Iran because it's highly endangered. And indeed, the eclipse is happening on a month which is activating the ancient month of Elam of Babylon, and this month is corresponding to the contemporary Iran. And also, it is happening it's really happening on the moon of the natal chart of Iran, which would say that there will be issues there as well. So what is happening is that this particular configuration of all retrograde planets is influencing us both ways. It is delaying the economy. It will create natural disasters and events, but it, in a way, it will help people to awaken. To finally, to wake up, and to it will work directly on their consciousness, and it is because of this particular so important event, which was triggered by the stationary phase of Jupiter in April, and this was the Notre Dame Cathedral fire. So, also you see, very interestingly, again, I will go back to this eclipse, but even if you forget the eclipse, all these retrograde planets are talking about the same thing. Jupiter is entering, Saturn is the greatest teacher. For every horoscope, for every person, Saturn is the one who is bringing us wisdom. And when Saturn is activated, we certainly talk about lessons of wisdom for all of us. So this is the good thing as a result of this interesting stellar configuration. So Saturn is entering very interesting phase, which is called a chronicle rise, retrograde and in a chronicle rise, and this makes him very, very, very powerful. So when Saturn is in this phase and is making opposition to the sign of Mercury and is eclipsing the sign of Mercury, it is to say that the authorities, which are represented by Saturn, will do additional measures to control media, to control free speech, to impose measures, and now this is due to this particular very specific phase of Saturn together with Pluto. And of course, why is this important? Is because when we know what is coming up and we see it already happening, then we will be able, of course, to take our measures and to, yeah, very funny to say, but imagine when you know that outside is raining, you just take in an umbrella.
Of course. When you say about Iran, how close is the things concerning Iran? How close is that to July the 2nd, the time when the US is affected?
I think that already Iran, in a way, is affected because all these retrograde planets are making opposition to Iran's moon, and even before, from 2017. November, this started, and we can follow it up. It is exactly the way it is. Iran, many times we had dangers for Iran, but right now, this will be triggered by all these retrograde planets, by Saturn, who is in a chronicle rise, and by the eclipse as additional factor. So I see this as a danger indeed for Iran. I don't think that things will develop well for them.
Right. So you could look at it and say potentially then, say America carries out a false flag attack on itself on July the 2nd. They use that as an excuse to attack Iran. But then the fact that they've done that, people start to wake up and they start to see what's really going on, and that's the positive thing to come out the back of it. Is that something that would fit in with what you've said?
Very much, but the July 2nd, I didn't know that the America will do force this on July 2nd, but July 2nd is also the eclipse day. And interestingly, when you divide the day into three parts, you call them watches, and the eclipse is taking part in watch, which is ruling actually China and Iran. So Iran is definitely in some sort of danger. Definitely things will not develop well for Iran. And the eclipse on the 2nd of June, and also happening in the watch, that is very much related to Iran.
Right, the 2nd of June, not the 2nd of July. I think I missed it.
July. The eclipse is in July, I'm sorry.
Okay, right. So I'm not aware of any false flag happening on the 2nd of July. I'm just thinking that would be a possibility if that date's important.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought what these people do that carry out these false flags and justify the invasion, they know these charts, they know these things, and that's why events happen generally on certain days. So everything you're saying fit.
Yes, they play with the dates.
Something going on around. Yeah, it's no accident that 9/11 just happens to be the emergency dial code for America, 911. That's not an accident. That's been done on purpose.
For sure. Absolutely. This is for sure. And so interestingly, I didn't look at the chart of the UK before. I casted the chart of the UK and I saw something absolutely amazing, which makes me think that the chart of the UK is also made on a very well thought date and timing, because you have on the ascendant Aldebaran, which is star of wealth, a royal star of wealth, and it is really, really powerful. And also the rulership, the sun, is near Antares, another star, which is related to exactly to this, to powerful leadership and rulership of the king, of the and also the chart is made in such interesting way that for sure those things are not happening just like that. Everything is well thought in advance.
Of course. When you say going back to Brexit and leaving the European Union, you think that it will drag on for some time. When you mean some time, do you mean a period of months or a period of years?
I think it may take longer because look, right now you're having opposition of Saturn, Pluto, a lunar node, all retrograde. They're making opposition to the natal moon of the UK. And now Mars enters there to make conjunction with the natal Pluto, again with the moon. And this is not good for the people. And these influences are coming from abroad, most probably from the banking system. I think these are manipulations which are dictated not from the UK. They come from abroad. I don't mean here the European Union. I have no idea who. But money is involved, and these are the banking systems, because Saturn is ruling the ninth and the 10th house of the chart of the UK, and this is definitely bank, and it's definitely abroad. And that is when this eclipse will take place, it will become even more complex. But minimum 3 to 6 months, you have a delay and conversations and manipulations that will go around the Brexit story.
Right, because they'll push for a second vote. That's what they'll want, almost certainly.
Well, Theresa May's basically said that in the last couple of days, hasn't she? She's been forced to admit that she's going to resign. I believe it's June the 30th. I think she's going to step down, whether this deal gets through or doesn't get through. But part of the deal is a vote on a second referendum, which MPs will probably vote for. And you're talking 6 months to get that ready, and 6 months of propaganda.
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
It's just the last one did me in. God knows what it's going to be like again. It'll polarize society over here, because there's this idea in the not from people you speak to in the street and the pubs, everyday people, but from the microphones, that if you voted out, you're a racist. If you voted in, you're more intelligent, and you knew what you were voting for. If you voted out, you didn't know what you were voting for. And oh god, it'll be so aggressive this time. The media campaign. It'll be interesting.
Yes, most probably yes, because exactly there is certainly hidden influence from abroad, very, very powerful, because when Saturn goes in the France code a chronicle rise, he is representing exactly the rulership, the authorities. Powerful, and this is going to happen exactly around eclipse time, the first week of July, and then they will try to impose things that will not be pleasing the people, because the moon is representing the people, the nation, and they will be imposing regulations which will not be in the interests of the common people. But this will take quite some time, because everything is delayed by all these retrograde planets right now.
So when you say that Saturn will work eventually to the positive of the people, what do you see happening? Is it a mass awakening that you see?
That's what I hope for with this European thing which happened with this satanic cathedral, because the Notre Dame, like most of the European cathedrals which are Gothic, are satanic, and you can see even these statues around the cathedral. I forgot how they call them, but then you see around these demonic images.
Yeah, the gargoyles.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah, gargoyles we call them. Yeah.
Oh yes, exactly. So this is for sure satanic. And when this was on fire, the fire in any culture is always purification. And when it comes from Jupiter, because at that specific moment I was looking at the chart, Jupiter became stationary to bring some sort of justice. This is how I see it too. And Jupiter is always justice. It is always our belief system. It is always religion. It is always awakening. Yes, so this is what I believe. Yes, we are going through difficult times because we live in a mini epoch ruled by Mars, by Aries. So we do live in interesting times. But when Saturn comes to bring certain lessons in a difficult way, they always result in wisdom. In any case.
Okay. For me, I can kind of deal with negative things happening as long as there's a positive at the end of it, in terms of, like you say, an awakening or kind of some kind of wisdom,
Yes.
which kind of
that's what you've got to take this whole Brexit chaos into, is them going back on that referendum result, forcing a second referendum. It'll rally so many people that think we live in a democracy that will realise we don't, which is a positive to come out of it.
Well, they said today, I saw an article today, and they were saying that, having done a series of polls, that basically trusting government is at an absolute lowest ebb that it's ever been in sort of recorded history, basically. And they were saying, this is dreadful. This is gonna. And I was thinking, are you all right, Joe? We're keeping you up, mate. I was.
No, I'm not.
I was thinking, this is a great thing. This is great that people are are standing up and going, no, I don't trust the government. You know, they see it as a negative. I think it's fantastic.
It's absolutely fantastic.
I think so. Because this is people are not blind anymore as they were, and also after Saturn moves away from Sagittarius, and this will be next year, January, February, things will start to resolve in a better way. But until then, you will be hanging like between in a situation which may not be resolved at all.
How do you see the situation with Iran? I mean, it's interesting you mentioned China, because almost certainly if the US goes for Iran, then you know, China and Russia are going to come in, obviously, on their side. How do you see that escalating?
Yes, I see this very bad for the people, because the moon is afflicted, and this is always the nation, the people, the common people. They always suffer the most, you know.
Of course.
And first of all, when we look at what happened at the day of the vernal equinox, we had Mars above the moon, and this is already ominous for possible hostilities all over the world. So we can't even hope to live in absolute peace. This is not going to be the case, and it's not. Anyway, it's not the case. And when you see that in all this, when I analyze the eclipse, and when I see that all directions points towards Elam, which is the city which represents nowadays Iran and China, I see this as possible troubles there. It will not remain on the level of communication only with America. That's what unfortunately, I don't think. I think it will have worse developments with hostilities, bad for the nation and for the people. Yes.
Right. So a World War III potentially then. I mean, it's something that
very possible. Very possible. I don't think that they will just leave it as it is. Maybe even the prime minister, or who was there in Iran, is playing in this game together with Trump. I'm not sure. Just a guess.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yes, I don't know. Yeah.
Iran's been on their list for a very, very long time.
Yes.
In the same way North Korea has, and up until very recently, the North Korean leader was giving them an excuse to go in there. And then, I don't know whether somebody's had a word in his ear, Putin maybe, or the guy in China, and he seems to have calmed down his rhetoric. But if you're looking for a reason to invade somewhere and the guy's firing missiles off everywhere, you've got your reason. Whereas Iran at the moment have kept very calm, they've kept it very diplomatic, and they've outsmarted America, if you like, to date. But yeah, quite conceivably, they could be in on the game and turn around and do something, and they get John Bolton gets his war he's always wanted.
I also think, though, to kind of disagree on the North Korea, I kind of think the fact that he was so bombastic and was firing missiles around, I think that kind of possibly saved him. Because if you look at all the other countries on that list, with the exception of Syria, they basically bowed down to America and apologised, and then got annihilated. And I think Kim Jong-un's probably thought, no, if I'm gonna go down fighting. And I think actually his kind of quite outlandish behaviour probably stopped a US invasion.
Potentially, you can look at it both ways. You can look at it both ways. It's the two.
Mm-hmm. No, especially with Iran, this started in 2017 with the entrance of Saturn and making an aspect with their moon. And then we started hearing about them. But now it escalated because of the eclipses triggered it, a few eclipses already. And this particular Saturn, Pluto, all planets retrograde. But interestingly, Jupiter is also retrograde. So it will work again on people's consciousness, but in a very hard way, I think. Yes, it will be hard.
And it will be this year, you think, when that will start? I
think so. I think it will be triggered very much, especially after the second eclipse, the first and the second eclipse, 2nd of July, and the one after, which is 16th of July. But the first one is worse. It's more sinister, because then Saturn is very young, in a fast code. I told you, a chronicle rise. He's like just rising, young, powerful, and also mad, because he's retrograde. So it will be triggered now this summer, and we will see how this will develop. But I don't like it so much.
Right. Okay. So be careful on the 2nd of July then, basically.
Oh, I also advise people absolutely not to watch the eclipses because these are usually difficult, dark, tense energies. It's better that we don't watch them. Doesn't matter that you can see on the media, they say, oh, go look, this beautiful red moon. I don't think this is advisable at all to watch the eclipses. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get pulled into the energy of it, can't you?
Absolutely. And also something to say, last thing, that this, we see the nature, it's not, the climate is not typical. We may see disasters, we may see all over the world, even volcanoes, all kinds of natural disasters taking place. And this would say that people really need to double check, to be careful while traveling. Oh, this is important. It's not to scare anyone, right? But it's just that, like, it's the simple thing is when you have information, when information can save you, can save your life. So I'm saying this for purpose, not to make anyone scared, but there are very possible all kinds of natural disasters all over the globe, and you see this happening with the climate already, which is crazy. In Belgium, we have winter still, or something like that.
Really, the temperature here is lovely. It's really nice and warm in England at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Stop showing off.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to plan my summer now. Right. So the 2nd of July, 16th of July. I imagine if they are attacks on America or fake attacks on America, they'll then go for Iran pretty quickly. So kind of August, September time, it could be really quite a horrible time.
This is very possible, yes. Attacks and hostilities and all kinds of terrorism is possible. Also, also in Europe, because let's not forget this omen was on one side good, but can also be complex, and also because the first eclipse, one second, let me see which one was it, will be visible in big part of Europe. So it's good that we are really also during this time Mars is becoming invisible. He's the warrior, he's the soldier. When he becomes invisible, he's Lord, which is Nergal, the Lord of the netherworld, is descending into the netherworld, and he becomes mean, unpredictable. So that's why also in Europe, people need to be really careful to listen to their intuition. When you hear that your heart is telling you don't travel, you don't. Just listen to your intuition. We all have powerful intuition. Every single person on earth. Just matter of listening to your intuition. And when you have the knowledge that right now the time, especially until October beginning, is a bit tense. We just need to be careful.
Of course. It's interesting you spoke about Notre Dame because when that happened, it certainly felt like it was something significant. And I do wonder whether there's a war on Christianity and that was part of that, almost like a kind of replacing the old, like you say, like fire being like a cleansing thing, whether it's intentional on their part,
Yes. Yeah, this is possible. But since it is triggered by Jupiter, I believe it was not for bad. I believed it would bring the Christians, because it's the Christianity, or just people on their on other level of consciousness awakening. We just said it. Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yes, let's hope so.
Absolutely, it's another sign of it's a very establishment building. It's a building that is very significant in terms of it has power over people. It's all big and all encompassing, and obviously that then falling effectively is another sign, almost like the Great Fall, if you like, which I think could be quite a significant thing to an extent in terms of a bit of an analogy.
Absolutely, yes, I thought so as well.
Yeah, it's certainly, we live in interesting times, to say the least. It's not going to be a dull year. You can sense that already, and we're only in May.
Oh no, we don't. We live in interesting times. This is a Chinese saying, but they don't wish you to live in interesting times, but we do live in interesting times.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's one of those. It's an exciting time to be alive, because despite all the negative things that are going on, there is also lots of positive things. And as you've said, hopefully some positive can come out of the potentially not very nice things that might happen in the remainder of the year.
Oh
in
yeah.
a year's time, we could look back and be sitting in a very different world.
Let's hope so. But also, see, this is what I always tried for myself, to remember, is that always there is, when the universe gives problem, she also gives the solution. So there must be solution in all this. This is so hopeful, right? It's not wishful thinking. I think this is really so.
Fingers crossed. Well, that's a nice way to end, I think. Should we end on something positive?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
let's do
absolutely.
that. Let's do that. Let's end on something positive, and hopefully we'll have a chat later in the year, and things will have kind of calmed down a little bit with a bit of luck.
Absolutely, to see the next astrological period around, for example, the autumn equinox, because this is marking the other half of the year, which will have a very different face already.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you for coming on. Much appreciated.
Pleasure. Thank you both so much.
Cheers.
No problem. Speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Krasi Attasio, a master of ancient astrology. It's fantastic that she's come back on. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to her later in the year, and it'll be, like I say, more upbeat and more positive. You've been listening to the Non-Binary Elephant podcast. We've actually got a sponsor. I don't know if you heard at the start. We're sponsored by Miles Franklin now, protecting your family's financial future from corporate greed and government corruption. Their website's in the description below. We'll be back next week with Eve Fisher, Australian journalist, talking about censorship of us and censorship of the media in general. I look forward to speaking to her. I look forward to speaking to you. I'll see you next week. See you later, Jay.
Goodbye, mate. Bye, guys.